Okay, let's talk about a name that, is basically synonymous with modern art. Pablo Picasso. He was, without a doubt, one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. And it's not just because he created a lot of art, but because he fundamentally changed it. So today we're going to dig into how he did it. His legacy is so massive that people called him El Maestro, which is Spanish for the master. And trust me, that's not just some cool nickname. It really signifies a level of genius that allowed him to just tear up the rulebook and completely reshape the art world for decades to come. So how does one person actually do that? I mean, we're not talking about just painting pretty pictures here. We're talking about completely rewiring how we see perspective and emotion on a canvas. To really get it, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. You see, here's the thing about Picasso. Before he could break all the rules of art, he first had to master them. And he did it at a speed that was, well, honestly, it was almost unbelievable. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's kind of wild. His father was a drawing teacher, so he saw his son's talent right away. By age 10, Picasso is officially his father's student. By 13, he holds his first exhibition. Most artists work their entire lives for something like that. For Picasso, it was just the warm-up. So after mastering the technical side of things, Picasso moves to Paris, which was pretty much the heart of the art world back then. And this is where his personal life starts to, well, bleed directly onto the canvas, coloring his work with this raw, unfiltered emotion. In 1901, tragedy just hits him hard. A very close friend of his committed suicide, and this event plunged Picasso into a really deep depression. This is what kicked off his famous blue period. For about 3 years, he pretty much abandoned bright colors, and his canvases became this world of somber blues and grays. You can literally see the link between his feelings and his art. When his mood finally started to lift, his entire color palette changed with it. He entered what we call his rose period, swapping out those cold blues for warm pinks and earthy browns. His subjects changed too. He went from painting figures of despair to capturing the lively world of the circus. All right, so he's mastered realism and he's mastered painting with emotion. Now Picasso was ready for his most radical move yet. He and his painter friend Georges Braque basically decided that art based on reality was, well, a little boring. So they were about to invent a completely new one. They called this new style Cubism. And what it did was completely throw out a rule book that had dominated Western art for centuries. You know that idea that art should be like a perfect window onto the real world? Yeah, that was gone. The new idea was that everything in nature could be broken down into basic geometric forms. This wasn't about reality anymore, it was about structure. So how did it even work? Well, it was a process. They would observe an object, like a face, and then mentally break it down into these flat geometric shapes. Then, and this is the revolutionary part, they'd reassemble those shapes on the canvas to show multiple viewpoints all at once. The front, the side, the back, everything at the same time. And that's exactly why a cubist portrait can look like a mixed-up puzzle, maybe with an extra eye or a nose seen from 2 angles. And the innovation didn't just stop with paint. They started bringing the real world into their art, literally gluing things like cloth scraps and newspaper clippings right onto the canvas. This technique, as you probably know, became collage, and it just blurred that line between art and reality even more. Now, as Picasso's fame was exploding, the world around him was descending into chaos, and a devastating conflict in his home country of Spain would go on to inspire what is arguably his most powerful and famous work ever. The year is 1936. The Spanish Civil War breaks out. This event would shake Picasso to his core, and it led him to make what would become his most significant political statement through his art. The catalyst was the absolutely horrific bombing of a small Spanish town called Guernica. Picasso was living in Paris at the time, and he was just shocked and outraged by this brutal act against civilians. So he channeled all of that fury into one monumental, completely unforgettable painting. Guernica isn't a painting you just look at, it's something you feel. It's basically an artistic scream. It shows people and animals just terrified, their mouths wide open in agony. To capture that pure horror and anger, Picasso stripped away all the color. It's just black, white, and gray, and it makes for one of the most powerful anti-war statements ever made. Even after the wars, and as probably the most famous artist in the world, Picasso's journey was far from over. This last phase of his life really shows us what made him El Maestro. He settled down in the south of France, but he never, ever retired.
His creative drive was just relentless. He kept exploring, kept experimenting with new styles in both painting and sculpture, right up until his death in 1973. He was 91 years old.
So, what was it that drove him? Well, he was a complex guy. Moody and thoughtful, but also funny sometimes. But here's the crucial thing. He was never satisfied. He had this divine restlessness that meant he could never stop pushing, never stop experimenting. That was the real engine of his genius. And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? It was this exact combination, a relentless imagination, that constant need to deconstruct and rebuild, and a technical skill he'd honed since he was a kid that truly earned him the title El Maestro. Ultimately, Picasso's whole legacy is really a lesson in creative courage. He taught generations of artists that rules are made to be broken, and that true innovation comes from seeing the world not just as it is, but as it could be. Which, it leaves us with one final thought. What rules today are just waiting for someone to reinvent them?